Our next in-person mastermind is coming up this fall, and we're heading to Vegas. We're kicking off this mastermind with an in-person tour at Zappos downtown Las Vegas campus, where you'll learn their strategies behind company culture, core values, employee engagement, and customer service. Looking outside the legal industry for business concepts and strategies allows you to gain fresh perspectives and innovative solutions that can be applied to improve and differentiate your firm's operations. Following the tour are the mastermind hot seats. Every attendee has the opportunity to dive deep into their business obstacles with their mastermind group and coach. We believe that nothing beats working on your firm in person, so join us in Las Vegas on November 7th and 8th. This is your chance to break through barriers, spark new ideas, and accelerate your law firm's success. Limited spots are available. Visit maxlawevents.com for full event details and to grab your ticket today.
Run your law firm the right way. This is the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. Your hosts, Jim Hacking and Tyson Mutrux. Let's partner up and maximize your firm. Welcome to the show.
Welcome back to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. I'm Jim Hacking.
And I'm Tyson Mutrux. What's up, Jimmy?
Oh, Tyson, I'm glad we're recording today. I'm glad we're doing this episode. We have a very special guest who's going to walk us through some issues when it comes to building out your CRM, mistakes that lawyers make, and all the kinds of things that you need to be thinking about if you're trying to take your firm to the next level as it relates to keeping track of potential clients and, in fact, even building out your operations. His name is Rob Petrie. He's with Setco Partners in the Great White North, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Rob and I worked together this last year, building out Salesforce for us. So Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
So Rob, tell us about how you got into this business and a little bit about your journey that brings you to today.
Sure. So I've been working with Salesforce my entire professional career, about 13 years. Did some in-house work for rapidly growing software companies for the first half of my career, and then got into consulting in a selling role about 7-8 years ago, always working with Salesforce. Did a few years, found a company that was willing to take a shot on me, teach me how to sell, fell in love with it. And then right around when COVID happened, took the leap and started my own firm with my partner, Tom, and we've been able to grow it ever since. So it's been a fun, fast-paced journey. I've learned a lot, but we're up to 22 employees right now, growing pretty quickly and figuring it out as we go along.
When I tell people that we made the switch to Salesforce, when I talk to law firm owners, their eyes get really big like this and they're like shocked. They think that Salesforce is for McDonald's or big sales companies or big corporations. When do you think that people should start thinking about Salesforce as a realistic options as far as what stage of growth?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly biased given the nature of my business, but it is a very big misconception that Salesforce is not intended to be used by small, medium-sized business. I would say 75% of the work we do is with companies with 150 employees or less. And I'm a big believer in the crawl, walk, run approach. So to your pointed question, Jim, my response will be right away. I don't think you necessarily need to do everything right away or obsess over it right away, but I think it's a very appropriate tool when you're starting a business or when you're getting serious about operations to try and put it in place right away.
Well, if you're used to the crawl, walk, run approach, then it must have been a nightmare working with Jim because he's the run approach and then abandon ship and choose another software.
Well, that's funny you say that. There's a little bit of that, but I would say Jim crawled and walked with other systems. So he came in very educated and very aware of the challenges of a project like this. So we like that. It's easy to work with firms that have kind of been through it before. So
yes. So I do want to talk about that. So let's jump right in because you've worked with Jim. Let's walk us through what the process was with Jim so people have an idea, because I know he and I have talked about it a lot on the pod, but I'd love to hear from you, your perspective as to what process you put him through, the firm through, so that you could build out what they needed.
Sure. So for a project like Jim's where we're replacing a system that's maintaining business as usual. There's a heavy amount of investment in the analysis and design phase. So it's a lot of process work. It's a lot of theoretical scenarios talking through not only how are you doing it today, but I think in a perfect world, challenging. Do you need to do it that way? Is there value in doing it that way? A system change like this is a really nice excuse to relook at things and rethink things. And oftentimes you're surprised by how many opportunities there are to simplify or speed things up. So we spent, I would say, Jim, 3-4 months maybe in that process, making sure we had a rock solid understanding of the workflow and the flow of data through the process before we broke ground and really started building. And the whole idea there is to not build as you go, to make sure we're on the same page. We're making Jim and his team aware of this decisions they need to make and the impact those decisions have on the build, the cost, how it's going to look and feel when it's rolled out. But ideally, once you set the stage, we're all on the same page. The building is the easier part. And I feel that was the case in your project, Jim, but I'd be curious to get your feedback.
We had a real cast of characters sort of building us up. So Rob gave us a great project manager named Jody Gilroy, and she was fantastic at slowing us down. And on our side, we had Jim, Videla, and Kelsey, and we are all pretty much, let's jump in and get going. And I remember early on, I was talking to Rob, I think even before we signed the contract, about how we currently did things. And you just switched back and said, why do you do it that way? And why do you have to keep doing it that way? And so for us, just the process of having a fresh set of eyes and people who are project oriented, because we were always, like you said, Tyson, run as opposed to being methodical. So slowing down and mapping it out, even though to me it felt like a pain, was really helpful. And I think it helped us get to where we wanted to be. So with that being said, and looking at the mistakes that people make when they think about building their software, obviously this is one of them, not necessarily spending enough time in the design stage. And it was really unpacking our processes and figuring out how to replicate that in Salesforce. What other mistakes do you see business owners or law firms make when they want to design, quote unquote, the perfect system?
Yeah, I think there's a few of them. One of the biggest mistakes we make, we encourage our clients to solve for the happy path. What that means to us is get it 90% of the way there and don't necessarily obsess over the 10% that may not fit into the happy path. It's amazing how that last 10% can blow up the cost and timeline of a project. And sometimes business owners get into a mode of, well, that's the whole reason we're doing it is for that 10%. They forget about the impact the 90% is going to have. So we encourage people to solve for the happy path. I think the other thing too is just socializing it and making the team aware of not only the fact that this is happening, but why it's happening. Jim, your firm, I've said this to you, did one of the best jobs we've ever seen in change management. Very early in the project, you were launching and speaking about an internal campaign to educate the team on Salesforce, explain why it was coming, but almost preset the tone of, hey, this is happening, so get on board and get ready for it. Sometimes we see business owners who get into it, but may not be all in. And I think your team can sense that hesitation. And, you're going to have people on every side of the spectrum involved in these projects, detractors, people who want things to stay the same, and then people who are really excited about it. The more hesitancy people sense from leadership, the more those voices start to get elevated and louder when projects get challenging. So I think getting in front of it, socializing, educating your team as to the why, that's another big thing we encourage people to do. And when owners don't do that, I think it's a mistake.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely wanted to get buy-in with the team. It wasn't particularly hard because we were having some pains with the software that we had. So we definitely switched that pain point and highlighted those issues that people were having. Let's talk about the time period after the design is done, or after the research is done and the investigation phase, you're switching to design, and then that launch period. Because you and I have talked about other situations you've had, and I know you had one colleague who kept putting off their launch. And can we talk about the importance of version 1 ideation?
I think I caught the end of the question, just the importance of the launch and go live. The go live phase and getting ready for go live, it happens in kind of a couple of phases. So there's the data cleanup and the data migration. So eventually the foundation's built. You got to get the data in, and then there's UAT testing. So we are very big believers and proponents of thorough testing. I always tell people, we want you to break the system. I'd rather you break it now than break it when your team is live and trying to go about their day jobs with that. But preparing for go live is something we as a firm are still trying to get better at. Go lives are hard because people are going to wake up one day and everything they're used to doing is changing. So I think one thing that made the hacking group unique with Adela, with Kelsey, with yourself, Jim, you're very technical. So you were involved in the build. You took ownerships of certain components of the build. You understood the ins and outs of the system. Not every business has those resources available or those skill sets available. So for our typical client, we're encouraging them as much as they can to sit down and spend time in the system before the go live. If things don't make sense, we always say, if you have a question, everyone else is going to have the same one. Make sure it makes sense. Make sure it's obvious how it's supposed to work. Break it, find the bugs so that when we get into training, go live is as smooth as possible. And then I always say, the first couple of weeks are going to be hard. It starts up here. It's impossible to get rid of every bug, think of every scenario. But if you can kind of press through those first 2 to 3 weeks, it really starts to kind of level out. People get used to it and they start to ideally see the benefits of the change. So those first 2 weeks are tough. They're always tough, but getting to kind of that 3rd, 4th week with your head still held high is important.
So Rob, about a year ago, I read the book, A World Without Email by Cal Newport. Amazing book. And I'm curious about like design principles, because there's a lot of things like with that book where like you want everything in one place, right? You don't want to go looking for it. You want it to be right there whenever you need it, is some of the concept ideas. So I wonder how much of that you're guiding the customer through the process and how much of it they're telling you what they want. Because I'm sure there's a lot of ideas that you get from customers where they want certain things and you're thinking, nah, you probably don't want that, and here's why. So can you talk about that aspect of things?
Yeah, my business analysts are going to watch this and kind of laugh at the idea of me speaking about design principles. I'll admit that is not necessarily what I spend all day doing. I think some of the core themes, though, is we try to take a user story based approach. So for your typical client that isn't a database expert, don't focus on how it's going to look and the technology of it. Focus on what you want it to do. So I need this tool to show me this data when I log into a page and look at hacking immigration law firm. I want to see these 6 pieces of information. Great. Don't worry about the how, or don't worry about the technology aspect of it. Focus on the want. And ultimately, it's our job to marry the business needs and business requirements then to the actual deployment. Salesforce is an intimidating tool if you've never seen it before. We spend a lot of time turning things off, getting rid of things, trying to clean it up so that you're not seeing 10 things when you only need access to 2 things. So that's another thing. These tools are so powerful. They do so many things, but for your typical 25 employee small business, you only need 20-30% of the tool if it's your first go around with the CRM. So less is more for sure. Simplicity is important. And then again, just trying to focus on in the design phase, you don't have to worry about how. We'll figure out the how. You tell us what you need and we'll figure out the best way to do it.
One of the things that drew us to Salesforce was the ability to build out the operations piece, that it's not just the CRM handling in leads. Talk about the power of Salesforce and why you thought it was a good solution for us.
Yeah, Salesforce is almost like inappropriately named now. It obviously made sense when the company started, but it's a business operations platform. And there's not just your CRM. There's a full suite of 15 to 20 different tools and modules. I run my entire business on Salesforce, with the exception of we use QuickBooks to push out invoices. It's a platform. So that's both a blessing and a curse. I think it's a blessing because we have a lot of small businesses that are aware of what it costs. They think it can do one thing, and we're able to say, we can actually build more on it, and you're paying for the tool already, so you might as well maximize it. But it's also a curse because the question with Salesforce is not, can we do it? 99% of the time, the answer is yes. is there enough ROI to justify the time, energy, cost, effort in doing that? So that's where it gets hard, because especially as a seller, sometimes I feel weird. People ask, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? Oh, yes, it can. Sometimes you just want to say no to build trust so you don't come off as the yes man in the sales process. But Salesforce can handle almost anything. The question is it worth whatever it's going to cost to build it there? So blessing and a curse.
What are some things that people think that they really need, but they really don't need them? Like, have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, it's very common for people to ask for integrations to other systems, and Salesforce is fully capable of pushing and pulling data to and from other systems. I think it's an ask because it sounds cool and people think they need it, but then you always follow it up with, what do you need it for? And when you can get people to have a dialogue about it, sometimes people are asking us to build expensive integrations for something they do 1 to 2 times a week, and it takes them 5 minutes to do. So I think integrations to other systems, we do a lot of integration work. It's high value work when there's a need for it, but challenging how many times a day are you doing this? How long does it take? Is it really going to save you enough time to justify building the integration? That's a big one.
Let's talk about dealing with 2 types of people: design engineers, people that are building Salesforce, and lawyers. They're generally two very different sort of mindsets and approaches, or just even business owners. Like, how does your team handle dealing with non-technical people and bringing them together to build something cool?
Yeah, it's hard. And I think it's harder because I love all types of people and enjoy talking to all different personality types. And there's a little bit of, when we get out of the sales process, now you're meeting the team you're paying for and the team you're going to build a partnership with. The first thing I try to do is assess personalities. And sometimes I'll just come out and say, assuming everyone is equally as capable, what do you want personality type in a consultant? What's important to you there? I think a big part of it is having solid project managers and business analysts on the front end of the project. Naturally, those types of people are social, they're warm, they're inviting, they're almost salespeople in and of themselves. But then our developers, on the flip side of that, the traditional developer is stereotypically introverted and they're not the client-facing resources. So trying to put a translator in the middle of them. And ultimately, we'll get to the point where everyone knows everyone and it's comfortable and we can get them on a call. But for those first several weeks, kind of having that point person translate what the team at Hacking is saying to us and then turn it around and translate it into the information our more technical teams need, I think is a big part of what we do.
All right. So one of the things, like, we're in the middle of a build out ourselves, right? We're on the back end of it. We're at the implementation phase of it. And one of my major concerns is how AI might disrupt everything that we're doing. What are your thoughts towards AI and how can we prepare to implement those things into our systems? I'm assuming that Salesforce has some sort of plan to implement AI into the system. So walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah. So like all tech companies, Salesforce is pretty much all in on AI right now, and the marketing materials out there, and they're talking about it constantly. They have released this year their first version of like generative AI features, and we as partners are trying to catch up to it. So internally at Setgo, we're on the tail end of what we called an AI cohort. Our director of enablement, Beverly, put together a 12-week program to try and figure out exactly the question you just asked. What is it? How does it work? Where's the value for our clients today? Where do they expect it to go? I am eagerly awaiting the results of that cohort. What I can say now, when ChatGPT was released and everybody heard about it and everybody started playing it around, I feel like that was the first time the general population got a taste of what AI could do. Now that it's been a year plus with the tool out, I think we all see the cracks in it and some of the weaknesses of it, but you can apply that concept when you put something into ChatGPT and you look and you're like, oh my gosh, that response is 95% of the way I would write it or what I wanted to know. Salesforce is trying to find those parts of your process, not to get rid of the human beings, but to get them doing higher value things. So if you're going to send a customer support email that you don't just want to be, hey, thanks for reaching out. Your case is closed at this time. Bye. See you later. But hey, thanks for reaching out to us. Here's a summary of what happened, the resolution path. Salesforce would like to get it to a point where you click a button and 95% of that email is written. So you can go back to resolving complex customer issues. So I don't see it as scary as some people think, but I'm also in tech, so I think it's kind of cool. But it's not in its current state a job killer. I think it intended to be a job enhancer.
All right, Rob. So we are going to start to wrap things up. Before I do, I'm going to give you a chance. Well, if people want to reach out to you and potentially work with you or just ask you questions, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, either connect with me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at rpetrie@setgopartners.com, like ready, set, go, partners.com.
Love it. Very good. All right. If for everyone that is interested in getting more information from Maximum Lawyer, search Maximum Lawyer on Facebook. You can join us in the big group. If you want to join us at one of our quarterly masterminds, go to maxlawguild.com. We would love to see you there. And while you're listening to the rest of this episode, if you don't mind stopping for a moment and giving us a 5-star review, we would greatly appreciate it. Jimmy, what is your hack of the week?
I don't know exactly how to define this hack, but we have brought back our intake team morning meetings. We just talk for 15 minutes about what's going on with the software or intake or any issue. Like today, we did just some training on how to handle objections. When you listen to the team talking about their jobs, you will hear things that surprise you. Even if you think you have it all dialed in, even if you think everybody's doing things the same way, if you listen to what they say, you'll hear things that might surprise you. So I have an intake specialist talk to me about how it slipped out of her mouth the other day. She's supposed to be sitting at her computer, but she said, yeah, I sort of like getting the Slack before I get a transfer because if I'm in the kitchen or something, then I can run to the computer. I was like, what? And my eyes went like this. So just having that dialogue, there's lots of value to the dialogue, but one of the things is that people might just surprise you. You might be able to fix things.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like getting those little tidbits from employees too. So it's good stuff. All right, Rob, we always ask our guests to give a tip, a hack. It could be a book. It could be a podcast, could be a quote, you name it. So what you got for us?
Yeah, I, as a business owner, and like I said, I run my entire business on Salesforce. People are always surprised to hear me say, I have a laundry list of improvements I wish we could make to our Salesforce org. And to me, it's just a question of what do we want our team working on? Our systems are our clients. So my hack of the week is to do what I do. When you notice inefficiencies in your process, in your system, just write them down. I have a notepad right next to me and I'll go, this takes forever, and I'll move on. And when it comes back the next week and I do it again, I start doing tally marks. So I try to keep a running list of all of the inefficiencies I see in my business, but more importantly, how frequently am I frustrated about them? And when you start to get those high tally things, you start socializing it. Does anyone else see this issue? And you start to see where the priorities really are. So keep a list on your desk and hit it with a tally every time it comes up in real life.
I love that. That's really good. I may use that. Awesome. All right. For my tip, I've been reading this book. It's called Spy the Lie. It's by some former CIA officers and it's really cool. And so the authors are Philip Houston, Michael Floyd, and then Susan Carson-Sero. But there's something that was near the beginning of the book. It's like in the second chapter where they talk about, and like, this is like the baseline, but like you can get past this, like you can be much better at spying lies. And it's understanding that you have a natural tendency as a human to believe what another person's saying. Like you will go out of your way to believe what that person's saying, even if logically none of it makes sense. You just because out of comfort alone, you'll go out of your way to believe the person. And so this is really helpful for me when it comes to things like depositions and in court, but who knows, talking to employees, talking to vendors, negotiating a new car purchase, like things like that, where you just have that basic understanding. You can kind of set your comfort aside to objectively look at everything else around it. So it's a really good tool. So I recommend it, but the book is really good. I would say it's amazing. It's a really good book to pick up on things like that, but I highly recommend it. Rob, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. I know that Jim's has been saying a lot of good things about you and is really excited to use their new platform. So thanks so much for coming on and sharing a little bit.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. To stay in contact with your hosts and to access more content, go to MaximumLawyer.com. Have a great week and catch you next time.
Before you go, have you heard Jim and Tyson talk about the Guild on the podcast or in the Facebook group? If not, you're missing out on some really exciting things happening with Guild members and their law firms. The Guild includes a community, accountability, trainings, group coaching, and in-person events like our quarterly masterminds. Inside, you'll gain support, tap into a network of connections, and continue learning, a common theme among successful entrepreneurs. Investing in a community is like the self-care of business ownership. Surrounding yourself with other people who get it is crucial when you're creating a rock-solid foundation to build your business on, one that's strong enough to withstand setbacks, transitions, and growth. So head to MaximumLawyer.com/the Guild to join now and get started today.